What is the best reality for my application? How do I decide if I create a virtual reality app or an augmented reality application? Think about your use case. Can your users sit on a chair and be immersed and completely disconnected from their environments and see a simulation for an education purposes, for example? Then that's a very good VR use case. But if you have to have some kind of connection with your actual environments, then augmented reality should be your choice. A great example is if you are educating a surgeon for a surgery, that's a really good use case and that you can practice in a virtual environment. But when you're in a surgery room, you can't be disconnected from your environment totally, but you might need to have some relevant information in front of you about the patient. And that's a really great use case for augmented reality.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Global Excel Conference. I'm really excited that you're joining us today. And of course, we have Christophe. Christophe have been really doing really good stuff in the Excel space, across the globe. And we're really excited to have Christophe joining us here.
Thank you, Ahmed, for having me.
Good. So I'll add your stream, and then you're good to go.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. I'm Chris. I'm the founder and CEO of Author Technologies, and today we'll talk about VR connectivity, the future of digital workspaces. I've been in augmented and virtual reality since 2013, and I was in early teams in some social VR projects and also some enterprise VR projects. But ever since 2016, I've been fully focused on enterprise collaboration, how we can use VR and AR to make enterprises more efficient, effective at collaborating internally. We've seen this technology really evolve from a very exotic, early stage and incredibly vague thing that we were pitching to these enterprises back then to something that now in 2021 is really a solution that is being deployed to serve critical business needs. And it's this journey that was for us incredibly exciting to be part of, but maybe more so the future of this emerging new category of solution, particularly 2022 and beyond, is incredibly exciting. So today we'll cover three different topics. We'll first make a case for XR collaboration. So answering the question, why would anyone actually put on a VR headset to work? We'll then dive into some use cases and client examples, trying to show what are these types of use cases that we have right now working and how are they evolving. And then we'll spend a bit of time on the outlook for 2022 and the future and what game changers the technology has in store for us that will further accelerate adoption of this new medium. Diving right into the case for XR collaboration, it probably helps to take a look at the last 2 years and how work as a whole has changed. So I'm not sure whether anyone still remembers the time before the pandemic, 2019. It seems to be decades ago, but it's really only a bit less than 2 years actually. But the way we were thinking about work, the prevailing work paradigm was still incredibly focused around physical presence. And even the most progressive and forward-looking companies only slightly dipped their toes in remote or flexible work setups. So it was really normal for us to spend basically our whole day in an office, even though in 2019, I would make the case that very often we would be half of the day already in video calls with people from other offices. And the world we were living back then in, it was still perfectly defendable to send 15 managers in business class from Europe to Argentina to put Post-its on the wall for a workshop. Then the pandemic hit us, and we did a complete 180 from mostly focusing on physical presence in the workspace to this full remote work. And while we tried to make this work, we realized that a lot of aspects of this new paradigm of how we would work together are actually incredibly enjoyable. And as we are, and I'm being incredibly cautious here, as we're hopefully, knock on wood, getting out of this pandemic or seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, this new topic of hybrid work is pretty much in dominating the current discussions around how we should structure the way we work together internally, and particularly in enterprises. I would personally make the case that I think everyone talks by now about hybrid. I'm not sure whether everyone even agrees on a definition of hybrid, and even fewer know really how to pull it off or are confident that they can actually make this new work setting work. It's a trend that has gained so much momentum that by now it becomes a strategic imperative to actually support working from home, because it becomes a question of whether you can hire great talent. Great talent by now expects a considerable amount of flexibility in terms of location and time, and it's up to the enterprises to actually make this work. The definition we sometimes internally use is that for hybrid is that productivity in my organization can no longer depend on physical presence. And the moment, whether this is now a 2 days a week in the office setup or a full remote setup, it really doesn't matter, because it's binary in the nature that the moment where you don't rely anymore on actually getting people into the same space is the moment where your technology stack internally needs to be able to handle these different settings of collaboration. The problem really is that we don't have a good track record of making distributed collaboration work in the enterprise. And this happens on 2 dimensions. The first one being collaborative productivity, and the second one being the emotional connections that employees can form with each other, with their colleagues, with their managers. Diving a little bit deeper into this first aspect of productivity, there's been a great study from the Boston Consulting Group where they interviewed a bunch of employees in enterprise companies, and everyone predominantly said that, hey, I'm actually more productive individually, but collaboration is in this really dire state. And even Microsoft themselves, and Microsoft being a champion of digital collaboration tools, even Microsoft themselves came out with a study just about 2 months ago that said that this remote work actually curbs innovation and productivity. So it doesn't seem that from a productivity angle, we've really figured out our toolkit to make this work. And it might be even more difficult on an emotional level with our workforce. In 2020, the Harvard Business Review wrote about how managers have real troubles finding ways to engage their employees and to connect with employees in this fully remote setting. And lo and behold, now it's 2021, and I'm sure many of you have read the headlines around this new term, the Great Resignation, this unprecedented surge in turnover that we're seeing in the US predominantly, but also seemingly emerge in Europe now. So while it's going to be interesting to see how this trend evolves, those are two problems that work from home to some degree definitely poses to enterprises. And the level of problem that we're talking here this is not low level. This is about the overall output of the company, the competitiveness of the company, as well as its ability to keep its employees. This is true C-level stuff that a lot of our clients are thinking about pretty much daily right now. And to make the bridge to what XR can do in this context, the case I would make here is that you will not solve this problem by equipping your workforce with slightly better webcams or fiber internet connection, if some folks don't have it, to ensure that you have an HD video stream. For us, it's about embracing a much more powerful medium to collaborate in. And we can debate how far advanced VR is as a technology and its benefits, but maybe also its cons. But I think it's pretty undoubtedly the most intense medium to engage with digital content. And this is really the underlying power that VR and AR have in the context of these massive challenges that are posed towards our work environment. The way we see how this is happening, if we try to start mapping out a path to the enterprise or business metaverse, we see this first emerging as a very select category, a new emerging product category within the hybrid work stack of enterprises. So I'm sure a lot of you folks are thinking about a world where we will work entirely in the spatial dimension. What we are seeing as this step in between is certainly that immersive collaboration or XR collaboration will coexist with these other tools to serve specific needs first. And from there, it will expand. So I will still have my text communication going on. I will still collaborate on documents on 2D with my laptop. I will still have video conferences, but for these deeper and more creative settings and for situations where I want to invest in our team more heavily and want to make sure that we have a way to connect on a deeper level, this new category is emerging. In line with this, we have right now in 2021, for the first time, seen that enterprises are actually calculating the business case to equip their knowledge workers with VR headsets. So again, the next step is not a complete displacement of our laptops and smartphones, but it's adding this new component to the toolkit we use, in this case, the hardware setup that our knowledge workers have, in order to accommodate these changing circumstances that come from these mega trends around distributed work. And many of you have seen for sure this headline around Accenture, but I think it's pretty telling in its size that we are, in many of these cases, no longer talking about super early stage pilots or incredibly vague innovation projects, but Accenture genuinely bought 60,000 Oculus Quest 2s and is deploying this for employee onboarding and training because they found this technology to match a need where they didn't have a good solution until now. If we try to see this as this road to the enterprise metaverse, it probably helps to take a look at, okay, what are these use cases? What are companies actually doing right now that allows this new product category to even emerge? And this is now the second section of this presentation where I'd like to mention a couple different use cases and examples of how this is being used. Conceptually, the interesting part that we're seeing is that very much corresponding to the two different problems I raised earlier, being the emotional connection that employees are searching for, as well as productivity, we also see this in the way enterprises adopt it. It generally starts with presence-focused use cases. So we don't immediately jump towards full-on productivity in XR generally. And we can debate now at which point a really great immersive meeting where I talk with my colleagues might be actually already productivity. But for the sake of this model, for us, productivity means using more tools actually in, for example, our application to organize information, to analyze information, to share ideas, actually embracing the toolkit that is within these applications. And so it's really not unusual that we would start with social events actually as a first use case in enterprises, where the main idea is just getting people with their virtual avatars into the same space, just providing them with a space where they can talk, where they can update each other, maybe about work, maybe about personal things, and they can get to know each other. Maybe we do a basic exercise with them, but this is pretty much it. This is the first step. The thing is, while the experience of VR is incredibly powerful, and therefore this feeling of presence is an incredible way to pull people into XR collaboration, it is not why people stay. At least our data suggests that if you only stay on this one side that is presence focused, it's going to be difficult to really retain and expand a user base. So you have to make this journey towards productivity, because for productivity, people stay. It's once the newness of the experience wears off, it's the utility at the same time of this medium that becomes incredibly important for a successful pilot or for a successful deployment that hopefully scales. Again, I don't want to discard the importance of feeling in the same room. It's just from our data that we tend to see that you better have a good solution for both of these aspects, for both productivity and immersion. And a typical journey is mapped here, where we then move from these social events towards team meetings and presentations. So we have some content in there, we might collect some ideas. And then at one point we break through a real barrier with teams. And this is once we start talking about workshops. So these are one-off important meetings where we get a bunch of people into the same room to figure something out. And the basic here under point 3 is really that, again, we're not trying to overwhelm at this point the users with maximizing the number of ideas they create or something like this, but it's really more about figuring out, okay, can we combine the presence that we already have in this meeting with idea generation or analysis of a problem, or going deeper into a strategic topic that we want to work on. And as we establish this, we then move towards complex workshops with our clients. That's a very typical journey that we see happening right now with most of our client engagements that we're having right now. I think if we start on this presence spectrum, I actually would like to also mention our own team as an interesting case study, because we've been a distributed team from day one. So 5 years ago, we honestly never had a real office. Well, some of the core team members knew each other, and before the company was really born with this remote spirit. And in the last 20 months, we grew from 6 people to 48. And anyone who's in a startup will tell you that even if you manage to get everyone into the same office, building a team culture for in such a period of growth is incredibly difficult, let alone doing this in a remote setting. I think, however, if you ask most of our team members whether they really feel like this is a remote company where they have met the super majority of their colleagues never physically, I think they will tell you that it doesn't really feel like this. They will tell you that given that we've used our own solution to meet in VR, that there was something that allowed us to build these bonds. Every Friday we meet in VR, at least once a week. We have this fixed time where we say everyone should meet in our virtual office and should get together in VR. And it was honestly born out of us thinking that we can't sell this software if we're not using it ourselves, clearly. But I think we ourselves realized only afterwards, in hindsight, that this was incredibly powerful to build a cohesive team, to build a culture, and to actually create these bonds that you would usually not have in a work from home setting. So moving from our own example to one of our clients, and I'd like to start with the United Nations, and actually a sub-organization, the International Training Center for the ILO. They are tasked with capacity building and coaching and really guiding other UN organizations through transformative projects and allowing them to actually equipping them with the right tools to get work done on a training and coaching level, but also on a productivity level when we talk about creating ideas or following up on projects. So it's a very broad mandate, and the UN is arguably one of the most international things that exist in the world. And there are just two examples here. One of them is on the left side, you see again a more presence-focused use case where it's a presentation by the ITCLO. It's a one-to-many type meeting where we leverage the fact that we actually are in VR together and we're working very in a very focused and in a very focused manner in a shared space together. The thing I'm personally, incredibly excited about is the right part of this slide, where you see, and it probably looks incredibly convoluted, but I can promise you it actually makes a ton of sense if you're in this space together with your colleagues. It's a workshop space with a lot of different exercises, pieces of content and tools that they placed in there where they actually collaborate with their teams, with the teams they coach. And they've been really pioneering new workshop methodologies and new meeting methodologies, embracing this third dimension that VR can offer with incredible results. Moving on maybe from the public sector to the private sector, the Boston Consulting Group themselves, them being a management consultancy, they have an intrinsic motivation to be always at the cusp of new technologies. And that's why they've also made incredible progress with some use cases within their realm. On the left side, it's a team affiliation use case where getting people into the same space, especially in a fast-paced, high-pressure environment that you might experience in a challenging job like a management consultancy, it's incredibly important to get people also to take a step back from work and actually enjoy being with each other and building these team bonds. There you see a different exercise that a team went through different exercises that the team went through as part of a team affiliation and team building exercise. And again, on the right side is the more advanced version of this workshop, of this use case, where we're adding more and more productivity components to the use cases to actually also get work done. On the right side, you see an agile masterclass where instructors were training within the scope of a recruiting event the participants on agile methodologies, and they use the tools we have in VR to build or to visualize our ideas to actually build a city. And they went through multiple sprints and really was an incredible experience to actually watch this use case unfold and how effective VR can be in this particular setting where you need to very quickly adjust, collaborate, coordinate in smaller groups. Then in the larger group, you need to report back and you need to visualize the ideas that you have. Moving on to a third type of example, which is from Société Générale, an international investment bank that has a clear need to bring their key clients into a medium where they can not only give these clients the top-notch experience that they're used to, but also find something that can handle the complexity of something as difficult as the analysis of a financial market. And that's exactly this use case. This one is an external use case with their clients where Société Générale uses, in this case, our platform to involve their top analysts, be they in Hong Kong, in New York, or in the UK, to join client meetings and give these clients the best possible briefing on their hypothesis around the financial markets. And again, here we have these two aspects. The one is the presence aspect, where it's a lot about bringing your client into the same space as your top analysts. But at the same time, the productivity aspect is that you can use these vast 3D spaces that VR allows us to basically build a museum of content that you can take your client through to really guide them through your thinking. You can break these incredibly complex, difficult topics down into more consumable chunks by spreading this content out and navigating through it spatially. So these are three different types of how we're seeing immersive collaboration or VR connectivity being adopted right now in enterprises and large international organizations. And if anything, in 2021, we've just seen these topics pick up more speed, and these use cases turn from very much prototypes and proof of concepts towards something that really feels like a repeatable meeting methodology that I can use and scale across my organization. And the interesting point I would like to make is that all of what I've just presented was still done on what we would argue is fundamentally gaming hardware. So I know a lot of you will say that, hey, there are enterprise-focused VR headsets, and non-gaming VR has always been an incredibly interesting and growing market, from training, visualization use cases, and I couldn't agree more. I would still make the case that a lot of fundamental decisions around the hardware categories and the ergonomic design, the input in terms of the controllers, was still heavily informed by gaming as a core use case. And if I remember correctly, also at an Oculus Connect, the statement was quite clear that I believe the Quest was supposed to compete with the Nintendo Switch. And if we now shift our attention towards the future and where VR and particularly XR collaboration is going, I think one of the most exciting trends is that VR as a whole is moving from this fairly still gaming focused architecture towards pervasive computing devices. So if you read through the latest updates on the major hardware platforms and their strategies around it, or the rumors that you might hear about upcoming hardware, it really seems that these devices are intended to rather compete with your laptop and no longer with a gaming console. And this brings us to the final segment of my presentation, focused on the outlook for 2022 and the future of where we're seeing XR collaboration going. So extending on the trends that we've seen in 2021, I'd like to highlight 3 distinct advancements in the industry that each and every one of them having the potential to be a true game changer in themselves for XR collaboration to become much more heavily adopted. The first one, and possibly the most important one for us, is the convergence of AR and VR. So I think a lot of folks, whether in 2015 or more recently, if you had asked them about AR versus VR, I think the general answer would have also always been that the industry always saw this convergence happening at one point, that we no longer talk about augmented versus virtual reality, but rather hardware that can support both of these types of technology seamlessly. And this is also something that our team honestly didn't have on our radar until late last year, that this convergence would come a lot faster than we expected. What does this mean for XR collaboration? It solves, in my opinion, one of the most fundamental problems that VR right now has as this new technology that we want to introduce in our clients and many, many more enterprises. It's binary nature, that either you're fully in or fully out. There's no gray zone, which makes clearly the commitment that you need to give quite high. So there's a lot of benefit that I'm so fully immersed in VR, in these VR meetings, but it's either on or off. There's no way to smoothly step into the virtual office. And the advances in mixed reality that were presented at conferences in this year, but also if you look at some of the great things creators in this space are doing with new APIs that are opening on hardware platforms, it's really remarkable how powerful this is in order to reduce this escapism of VR. The ability to have a smoother entry into the virtual office, maybe a mode where I still see my desk, I still see my coffee cup, but I also see the digital content I want to enjoy. This hybrid setting is, in our opinion, an absolute game changer. And building up on this, I think Horizon Workroom has done it incredibly well in showcasing how you can then use physical surfaces actually for productivity by using your desk as a surface to draw on, for example. Second, and very much related to this, is this development that I mentioned before, that hardware and the OS features as a whole are moving towards a much more pervasive and open and use case agnostic architecture. So whether it's seeing my keyboard in VR that solves a lot of input issues, or whether it's advances on the operating systems that it's more easy to integrate my 2D content that I'm used to from my normal work. All of these developments, and I think a lot more that are in store for us to come, we will see them next year taking a lot more shape, and they will again accelerate our ability to work effectively in VR much more. The final aspect is really the maturation of software in these areas. As I said, we see it firsthand that we are, for the first time now in 2021, we're not starting from zero when we talk to a new client. We can say, look, based on what you tell us, we know these 3 use cases might be relevant for a team like yours. and these two we can explore. And this very much depends also on how long software had to develop and adapt to the use cases and the feedback of users. So this is something we've seen where now that a lot of fundamental problems are solved in VR, it allows us finally to go deeper and to really address some of the needs where 2 years ago we were still struggling on a completely different level, just getting people reliably into VR, for example, rather than thinking about how do I export a pinboard's content to ideally match as many tools that the company might have in its hybrid work stack already. What does this mean for enterprises, however? Let's take a look at, the going back at the case for XR collaboration. If we were to think of this as, the early fragments of the metaverse, these first use cases that are windows to a future spatial world that we will eventually, deploy across maybe all aspects of our lives. It truly feels a lot like we are in a Wild West type scenario. There's a lot of free area, free space, and if you're an enterprise and you are right now deploying this technology, if you right now invest in this, you have this chance for incredible asymmetric upsides. It's very much like 20 or 25 years ago, being at the cusp of internet and user-driven internet emerging. I see a lot of parallels to this, where you can really create something or establish a presence and have real ownership in the metaverse, where others that will come later to the party will always have to catch up on. This unfair advantage of being in the space early is starting now and will accelerate next year. We're starting to see this point where it's not an investment in the future only, but clearly you still need to have a forward-looking approach, but you can already reap the benefits now over the next 12 months, for example. So yeah, with this, I'd like to close the talk. It was great to be here, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was really, really a nice session. Again, I really love the way you talked about the integration of 2D to 3D. I feel like this is a conversation that is really missing in most VR collaboration. You see a lot of people trying to say, what, we want to move into collaboration and then let's jump straight into 3D, right? But then it is clear that we are used to the likes of Meet, Zoom, that 2D screen. Then it's going to take time for us to transition into full 3D. So that I think that was really, really cool. But I mean, again, okay.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Again, if you have questions for Chris, feel free to drop them in the chat. But again, I mean, I feel this should be like again, Author has been doing really, really cool stuff with VR collaboration. So again, this puts you in the right position to answer this question, which is how long do you think it would take for enterprises to see VR collaboration as a normal stuff? Again, the way we see Meet and Zoom, as with Teams, are the normal stuff now. How long do you think it would take?
Yeah, I think it's already right now. I mean, I can't share all of the stories because some of them are internal, but I can tell you that by now, clients of ours are approached by their clients, without actually themselves soliciting it, about VR meetings. It's an interesting trend where you are already now in 2021, you're seeing this, and I'm not saying it's being deployed across the world in every single use case, but you're seeing it for different industries, that it's starting to have this footing already now. And I think if we look at the advances that we'll make in 2022, all of this will just be supercharged. So I would not be surprised if in 2023, it's in particular use cases, maybe employee onboarding and in workshops, it's a normal product category where you say, look, this is, maybe not everyone in the world uses it already, but you're no longer surprised if somebody tells you, yeah, we're actually doing work in VR. So I think it will become pretty normalized towards the end of 2022 and throughout 2023. And as we move then towards 2024 and the following years, more and more of these use cases will likely find a way to become more effectively used and supported in the spatial dimension.
Oh, wow, nice. I think there's a question again. I still have like a couple of questions for you, but again, let's see this. Can I see this?
Oh, Outlook as innovation for 2022. That was more the word outlook as in let's look towards the future. But to answer the question whether XR and Outlook technologies will be integrated, I think it's pretty remarkable what also Microsoft is doing in the scope of the metaverse. And I think if anything, something very promising is how open a lot of the large players are approaching this topic. So it doesn't seem like, at least at this stage, it doesn't seem like everyone is trying to build up walls, but rather bridges towards other solutions. So definitely think that XR collaboration will leverage the entire Microsoft ecosystem of productivity very heavily.
Awesome. Thank you. We also have one here.
Yeah, I think that's a great question about which hardware we're using right now and what our long-term plans are. So we are by nature fully agnostic in terms of hardware. The important part for us is we really believe in all-in-one headsets. So 6 degrees of freedom, but untethered. No need for any laptop or PC. That's really important. As we've just seen, it makes the entire value chain so much easier to get actually users into VR. We do have quite a lot of usage on the Meta platforms. I think they have been, pushing a wonderful approach towards more, productivity-related use cases, but also HTC with the Focus 3 has been them being an incredibly enterprise-focused company in the scope of VR. I think they also have a very good answers to some questions that enterprises are asking. For us, it's really right now still a phase where we want to work with our clients. We want to give them a lot of options. I think we haven't yet seen the one true enterprise VR device. I very much think that this will happen next year. And until then, we will still work sometimes with maybe some consumer type hardware, sometimes with, hardware that might be not perfectly suitable. But as 2022 progresses, we're pretty positive that this will be a solved question.
Nice. I think we have one more.
Yeah, thank you. Content creation for these emerging environments. I mean, that's a huge topic, and I think it starts on. I just thinking about it, I see so many different levels where content is created. for us, we right now, while we try to be as open as possible with our architecture, we always feel like we need to do our work right first. So we cannot sell companies the metaverse if we're not actually addressing specific needs. So what a lot of our effort is around content creation within a meeting space that we have available. We obviously can, get other spaces and custom environments, so to say, into Arthur. But a lot of our attention is to rather be very open on files, but then let users create these virtual environments with the tools we supply. I think there's going to be a major shift going forward that also, intersects with Web3 and a lot of the creator economy emerging, where I think it's just incredibly exciting what we will be able to tap into in terms of the breadth of content available in the metaverse, if you want to call it already this way. But yeah, right now we are very much focused on giving users the tools to start working in our spaces and designing, for example, a workshop environment based on their needs.
Awesome. Actually, again, one more question I might send, and again, and this is because I myself I develop for VR, right? And
yeah.
And then we sort of like have this time frame, when if I try to move more than 2 hours, I start to feel, uncomfortable, right? So,
yeah,
how long do you think, it will take us to move away from that kind of? Because again, I think it's really key for the future of, VR connectivity. How long do you think it will take us to move out from that?
Yeah, with regard to the comfort level in VR, I would separate it out into 2 different aspects. I think there is VR sickness, which is something we can solve. Like if you do your job well, as an application, in our case, the seasickness feeling that some users might feel in VR usually comes from the virtual environment moving while you physically don't move through space. And this asymmetry between your inner ear and what your eyes tell you is what makes you feel sick. So I think this is handled, like we can handle this by having, calm meetings in our case. We do maybe have some lightsaber fights, but generally no racing simulation going on in our workshops. I think this very much helps us also in terms of locomotion. We are fairly honestly conservative about how quick this motion is and how much you should teleport around in these spaces. So I think that part is, I would say, is solvable. I think the other part, and I think you being a VR developer, there is some discomfort that can come just from wearing the headset, from eye strain, and from other aspects like this. And I think looking at the hardware roadmaps that the hardware suppliers are, at least the information that is publicly available, I think this convergence between AR and VR could help a lot there. I think a lot of sickness comes from us having to be fully immersed in this space. There's a lot of things going on. And I could see that seeing your real space, your normal desk already takes a lot of the mental strain away. In terms of eye strain, I think we will need to wait for more comfortable headsets. And when I have this conversation with our clients, it's really funny because it's remarkable how quickly you also get used to it. Then after a couple sessions, and then actually realize, in the first session I felt still a little bit uneasy about how pixelated something was, or maybe something was a little bit blurry, but your mind adapts. I think over time it will be definitely solved on a hardware level. In the meantime, application developers need to do the best they can to make it as comfortable as possible for users.
Yeah, true. And then this sort of like takes me back to when I was playing Vader Immortal on the Quest. And I just felt like like this was very, very good running on the Quest, and that's just sort of like triggers a lot of thinking, and I mean, if we can achieve this kind of realism on the Quest, then, I mean, I think we're on the right track.
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, but again, I mean, what are your, again, there's the rumor about the old Apple VR sets coming out. We still don't know when it's going to come out. But again, the leaks saying the M1 chip would be on the headset. What do you think, that would mean for the for the whole XR industry?
Oh, wow. I think, I get so used to the limitations that are just there in terms of, computing power and visual fidelity that I have to actively force myself to say, hey, that there is a world where we can have dynamic shadows and lighting and, much higher resolution and higher fidelity in VR. And it's something that I think chip technology, if this advances, would be, I think it's again one of these game changer elements that is truly there. So I mean, I'm a big fan of the M1 chip. I could only imagine what they could do if they built one for an XR headset, the power and the quality they could push through a headset like this. And I think this will become then, even in use cases like ours, where, for example, maybe we're not an engineering tool, right? Like for us, we don't need to have the highest degree of realism of 3D models in order for our meetings to make sense. But I think on a subtle level, it's going to be just so incredibly powerful for the users that you have a more realistic setting and really feel comfortable visually as well in there.
Really, I mean, I agree. And again, just like off, what we've been talking about, you have like like a really really impressive background, running a lot of components. So again, you want to share about your background, again, so people are probably watching you, and again, takes you as a mentor. They want to be like you. So again, what would be that advice you give them? You can also like share your background.
Yeah, I mean, my background, actually, how I got into AR and then VR was actually just because I was always interested in startups and new technologies. So I did actually follow a business education, but as a hobby, I was always coding myself and developing back then, simple websites and stuff like this. So I was always very close to technology. I think I went a pretty unorthodox way, as in I pretty much immediately started off with startups. And I think that's, I think I'm not sure whether I would recommend it to everyone, because I think I had to learn a lot of things the hard way doing it this way. But if I had to give someone advice right now, I think it's this incredible new trend that we're seeing here around Web3 and the metaverse. There's so many opportunities to become engaged. I think the cost of entering this space as a developer or a business person is a lot lower than it was 5 years ago. And the entire industry is so open and welcoming. At least I would say the startups I know and the partners that we work with, I think there's a lot of opportunities to intern or to get an entry-level job, because it's a fast-growing field, and smart people are needed on all ends, be it the business side, be it the tech side, or anything else. So I think it's really about becoming involved, reaching out to people, and I'd be surprised if you spend a while in communities like also the global XR space, if you couldn't find some touch point with someone where you then can actually enter the space fully. Definitely, if anybody is interested in joining the journey to the metaverse, more than happy to please reach out on LinkedIn or on Twitter to us. We're more than happy to talk.
Awesome. Again, Chris, it was really, really nice, having you, on the Global XR conference. talking about the future of VR connectivity, again, which is really, really key to the future of the metaverse, and then like, well, it was really, really nice talking with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep. Any last word?
Not at all. I'll see you in the metaverse.
Nice.
See ya.
See you.